Cool. All right, so we left off here. We finished this warranty support section, which is now the troubleshooting section. So I'm going to jump on down here to the service maintenance. So can you explain this section to me a little bit, and what's going to be populating this section here?
Service maintenance, I think, is almost an expansion, I guess, of the home screen for your services that are upcoming. And it's kind of an interactive section because with the services for your equipment, and I think that if they could self-prioritize by when services are due by frequency, so with something more common like a monthly inspection versus an annual service, so we'd have them prioritized by timeline.
Okay.
And that would just be everything that was pre-populated from the selection list. A lot of that has to be updated as you go so we can monitor and track what the customer or the client's actually performing.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll just be like individual tiles showing like with like the push notifications monthly or whatever frequency they choose for updating the system. We know like how many miles they're putting on their unit or how many hours they're putting on their generator. And by doing that, we can track their service interval and give them reminders for when their next maintenance event is due.
Okay.
So this is still per RV, so we'll still need that way to switch back and forth between RVs.
Yeah, at the bottom. So everything here is going to come from the database based off everything you selected here, correct?
Yeah.
Based on the knowns, right.
Okay. All right, so let me write that down so it's at the top level.
And then the maintenance frequency and service recommendations are all pulled over for those items from our DBAS based off of the predetermined selection we've made on the manuals when we were doing the building the database.
Okay. So I mean that's more on the technical end though.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's see. I've got all of these items here. They're organized or sorted, however it is that you described. If I click on this, what do you expect to happen?
Is that show the defaults?
Actually, before I ask that, though, I mean, currently, I think what we saw in the document was you had a few different sections. You had guidelines, alerts and reminders, and preventative and scheduled maintenance. Do you want to have this at a top level, or do we need to just do what you just said and just list out the items that were selected from the equipment list?
Do you think, Andy, it would be beneficial? Because each of those subcategories kind of pertain to each piece of equipment. So maybe if we listed the equipment, when you clicked on it, it gave you the options for those three categories internally for that piece of equipment.
Instead of, I think that probably makes sense, actually. Mm-hmm. Except for, well, mm-hmm. We kind of, I would like a place to see all of them too. I wouldn't want to dig into every single piece of equipment to go find my alerts and reminder settings for that piece of equipment. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that's more high level set. Are the guidelines here, Tim, basically the OEM recommended service versus like actual?
So in my mind, like somebody may want to be more stringent following the service guidelines for their main engine than they would for say like a roof air conditioner, something that's not so critical on the maintenance side. So they may not want a daily reminder to check the screen filter for their roof AC, but they may want trip reminders or weekly reminders for checking their engine oil level. And that's just purely going to be generated off of the frequency that the client determines that they want.
Right.
I think if you went strictly off of OEM guidelines for everything, then there'd be no time to RV. You'd be
for sure
doing
maintaining it the whole time. So, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just gonna say, so what are you guys leaning towards? Starting off at this high level, or just digging into the equipment list first and then going through each one of these flows?
I think it makes sense to handle alerts and reminders in both places. Probably, I would like a long list of them that I could scroll through and turn them on and off for a set frequency. But I also see where it would be useful to have it per equipment. Otherwise, I think everything else per equipment makes sense.
I mean, what we could do is, say you clicked on alerts and reminders, you could get a list of all the equipment and then set it at the equipment level.
Oh, that's true. I think that would work.
If you had a list and then like to the right of it, little color-coded buttons that you could choose for like OEM recommendations or customer recommendations, and if they clicked on it, it could pop up a little options section where they could choose their frequency.
Okay.
Is that what you're talking about?
Basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Turn it on and set frequency, right?
Yeah, so when we get to these notifications, like, is there only going to be one notification for a certain piece in an equipment list? Or could there be many different notifications with different purposes?
Well, technically, each piece of equipment's going to have a different timeline for maintenance and inspection guideline.
No, I understand that, but let's say I click alerts and reminders. I get the list of items that, and then I then click on air conditioning and set an alert timeline basically for that, for air conditioning. Is there only one type of notification for that air conditioning, or could there be multiple different types of notifications that I would want to set at different intervals?
I could see the use case for multiple. One for service, some for service, some for warranty.
And if so, how are we defining those notification types?
That's a good question.
That is
Zach.
a good question.
A lot of these more real specific Q&As are going to be, we're going to be working through those equipment specific questions during the database collection.
So
how we're going to handle those questions, we're not 100% sure all the questions we're going to ask yet, because we haven't determined how much of it's absolutely necessary versus going to the extreme side.
Okay. So here's kind of what I'm thinking for this. You click on alerts and notifications, then you get a list of all the different equipment that you had previously selected. If you click on the equipment list, you'll then be brought to a dedicated page for it where you can add any alerts or reminders or whatever you want to call it for that piece of equipment. Now, what I'm thinking right now is when you click add to add an alert, you can set the timing and the schedule and the interval. But then I think there should be a spot to select the title or the type of notification. And for now, we could say, hey, that's coming from the database. So it could be like a drop down of predefined types of notifications that you know that they're really the only ones they need. And then if we find out that, look, it's just too much work at the moment to figure out all those different notifications, we could just open that input up to be like a free text input, I think, and just let them title it themselves. And that should cover everything else.
That's a great idea.
You like that, Tim?
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, that makes it super flexible.
All right, so let me see.
So Andy, on the DBAS side of it, we're going to be freeform entering all the maintenance recommendations based off of their timeline from the timetable.
When you say freeform, we'll get more specific than that. We're going to try to not make it freeform as much as possible.
So what I mean by that is like, say you have a table that says like weekly you have to do this, monthly you have to do this, semi-annually you have to do this, and we're populating and inputting those to where it's just a generic template for that piece of equipment. So when they're going through their alerts and reminders, maybe there's a generic option that just gives them the quick feature to where it just automatically will do every reminder that's set up for that piece of equipment, or they can get into it and see a full list of every maintenance recommendation from the OEM, and they can just choose which one they'd want on or off. Or does that sound too complicated?
I like the idea of turning on the OEM recommendations.
So you can turn them on, and maybe it has a way of giving a snapshot of what the OEM recommendations are. So it would just list out everything that's in that portfolio for that piece of equipment's PDF, so they can see like on a weekly schedule there's this, on a monthly schedule there's this, and then they just kind of hit the little notification bell so they know it's on or something.
Right. That's a bad idea.
I do like that idea as well. So what that's making me think is, so I mean, if you go to your calendar, or not your calendar, if you go to like your alarm clock on your phone, do both of you guys have iPhones or Androids?
Android.
Okay. So I know on iPhone, I'm sure it's similar to this on Android, but if you've added a bunch of alarms and you go there, you have a list of each alarm and you can toggle them on or off.
Yes.
So I think if you guys are going to go do the work to figure out what the notifications are, then there is really no need to have like some sort of free flow notification in here, I don't think. So if we do what you just said and list out each one of those notifications, we could make it simple so they could just toggle all of them on, all of them off, individual ones on, individual ones off. And then if they click into that notification or alert, if you will, we could give them options to change the interval and schedule, but then also provide an option to reset that to default, which would, I believe, come from the OEM.
I like that a lot. I like the set OEM reminders and then set, I don't know, practical user recommended reminders, and then.
All right.
Yeah, so they have the defaults OEM, and then if they open it and see the list, they have the option to, like if they're going through the list and they don't like the daily reminders, they can just click on it and it reads it out, so it just notifies them that they won't receive updates for this portion of it or whatever.
I can't type today. Okay. All right, I'll finish writing that one up later. So I think that covers this whole alerts and reminders section pretty well. Let's jump over to the guidelines and preventative and scheduled maintenance. Which ones do you guys want to tackle first here?
I think guidelines kind of ties in directly with alerts and reminders, because the alerts and reminders are being generated around those OEM guidelines.
So is this a necessary section, or is this kind of redundant?
I think it's redundant. What do you think, Andy?
I think if we're if I unmute myself. If we're careful about the way we display those alerts and reminders, I think it could be eliminated because it is the same thing. The alerts and reminders are based on those guidelines, so as long as we're displaying the guideline, they can turn on the reminder about that guideline, basically. So as long as we're careful about that, I think it would work great as one list.
The only thing thinking about it right now is in those manuals, though, Andy, a lot of the alerts and reminders are just setting up the action that they need to perform and reminding them. But internally, when it says like daily inspection, what does that mean? Is that where in guidelines you could maybe expand on that to walk the customer or the client through the process of what needs to be performed? Where are they going to be able to navigate to in the application, I guess is what I'm saying, to figure out what they're actually supposed to be doing.
And is that something that they saw in alerts and reminders, or is that something they saw somewhere else?
Well, a lot of those processes, so it may say like daily inspection, but it doesn't expand on that. And that could be like a 3-paragraph, look here, do this, do that. There's not going to be room in alerts and reminders for it.
And that's not the right place for it, for sure.
But I think that's where guidelines was generated from, was somewhere where they can go to get an understanding of what that alert or reminder is even talking about.
So how do I do the maintenance on my own rig?
Yeah, but you get an alert that says main engine service. It's not going to go through a full list of everything that entails.
Right.
It's just going to be a reminder and a frequency setting. But you have to be able to go somewhere for it to explain, yeah, you need to do A, B, C, D, E through F,
I think guidelines make sense then. And then have it also go per equipment, so guidelines, and then find your equipment, and then
it just, once you're in that equipment, it would have a list of all your maintenances that you've selected. And when you click on them, it gives you a brief explanation of that service, which I think we'd have to be pulling over from our DBAS again.
Right, for sure.
So you said a list of maintenance that you selected, or a list of equipment you selected?
So in the alerts and reminders, if you have maintenance reminder set up, then in guidelines, you'd be able to see what that entails.
Okay. All right. List of.
We should be able to see all the guidelines, not just the ones we have reminders for.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. Just be able to see everything that the OEM's recommending that we've put in from the internal.
Right.
Okay. So you click on guidelines, you go to a list of equipment that you had previously selected for this RV. You click on that equipment part. At that point, what do you see? Is there's going to be more than one sort of test per equipment type, or will there only ever be one?
So it would cascade from frequency. So if it was a daily versus weekly, then monthly, then yearly.
So there's going to be multiple things listed.
Yeah, and then you could click into that, and it would give a definition or explanation of what that actually consists of.
And is this going to be text, or is this going to be a PDF from coming from the database?
I would make it text or video. We'll probably replace text with video as we get bigger and grow. So I'd much rather watch someone show me how to inspect something than read about it.
Yeah, and it sounds painful in the beginning, Andy, but if we do take that text out, we'll be able in the future to directly pull that information if we do start to outsource for video demonstrations and stuff,
Right, exactly.
You'd already have that credible information.
Right.
Alrighty. So that looks good then?
Yeah, I think so.
Perfect. All right, so now let's jump over to this preventative and scheduled maintenance. Now, this to me sounds a lot like what we just did for alerts and reminders. Is that incorrect?
It does sound the same to me.
Yeah, I mean, for preventative and scheduled maintenance, is that something you would just remind people to do, or is it something completely different and I'm just not understanding?
Or is that a timeline view?
I think, was that supposed to be, I'm pretty sure, I don't have the full breakdown in front of me, but the preventative and scheduled maintenance, I think, I can't see the main menu from here for the other options, but is that going to be where we generate our service recommendation list that they can email to their service provider?
This is what we have from the nav: dashboard, equipment, library, troubleshooting, service maintenance, service requests, and then settings.
So no, that would be more towards service requests. What I was
Request.
thinking. I think that's just redundancy.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's
we can
redundant
cut
for
that
now.
then. All right, I'll go ahead and cut this. All right, so that covers the service maintenance section of this application.
It may, Zach, if we were to use some of that verbiage for the scheduled maintenance in with the guidelines, just so it kind of ties together.
Like like use the words preventative and scheduled maintenance guidelines or something like that.
Exactly.
Okay. So just rename guidelines to be preventative and scheduled maintenance guidelines.
Anything else?
That's it.
I think that works.
Awesome.
You really make this program look easy, Zach.
Really? Just a side note, I'm not going to go into these screens right here as they were related to this flow, but we just defined the rest of the flow.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not going to go into those.
Cool.
All right, so service requests. This is what I got for you right now, so help me out here. What do we have going on?
So
go ahead, Andy.
I'm going to try to break it down the way Tim's explained it to me a few times, and then I'll let Tim correct me. How's that?
Well,
So I think a lot of these things, several of these things, RV owners can do themselves, and a lot of them they won't want to do themselves or can't do themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So we need a way to define a list of maintenance that needs to be done, and a way for them to generate a list to share with a service provider of the things that still need to be done if they did some or none of them, basically. So we need a list and a way to transfer that list to a service provider based on what still needs to be done.
exactly.
Okay, so you said we're creating a list of what exactly?
So it's the list of things that need to be done. So if it's time for a semi-annual maintenance, there's going to be a list of 30 things long, maybe. The customer might do 10 of them, but 20 of them they want help with. So they're going to take it to the shop and let the shop do the fluid replacements and all those weird other things. So we need a way to show them the list that they can take action on, and then if they're done taking action, be able to send that list, which would also pair with a list of parts that were needed to replace parts or.
Yeah. So with the service request, just like the previous screen where you have a selection of all your equipment types, they'd be able to add that to like a shopping cart almost. And in that shopping cart, it would either be able to generate a PDF print off of whatever they've selected for service, whether it's generator or engine or chassis, lube. And they can print that off in a PDF to bring with them, or they have the option to email it. And what that system's capturing for the service provider is all the prudent information they need to perform the service. So if they select a generator, it would pull over the generator information and request a service with the steps that we've predefined in the internal server. So if it's engine oil, oil filter, fuel filter, it'll bring that information over with the information that the customers put in that's specific to the piece of equipment. So essentially they could send an email off to the service center, and before the customer even arrived, the service center has the opportunity to have everything ordered up and there waiting for the customer to expedite the service event.
That's the idea. We're gonna try to get them a list of all the parts and things that go along with that maintenance, the lube, the like you said, and maybe the amounts and types if we can. So that's gonna be stuff that we'll have to put in the database too.
Okay, so let me walk through this flow from the beginning just a little bit here. All right, so what I'm doing right now is I'm basically just adding some descriptors up at the top so they kind of understand what to do. And we can obviously make this look a little better than just text. But anyways, so I'm coming here to create a list of work items that I need a professional to complete for me.
Yeah.
I can export and well, let's actually just say share. I think that makes more sense.
I think I was gonna say share.
So I can share this list to anyone via my native sharing options for my device. So if I'm on an iPhone and I pop it up, I can, send a PDF in a text or an email or download it or whatever. Same thing for Android.
Great.
So this right here is going to be a list of items that we have added. And then we have a nice button down here to actually go ahead and add one of those lists or one of those list items. So what I want to do right now is go through the process of actually adding that item. What the information of Okay. So I click add service item. What do I get?
Probably a list of equipment. I'm trying to walk through this, Tim. I see these items being almost auto-created.
Yeah,
based
so
on timeline and usage.
exactly. If you click on add service item and then up top how you had the predetermined list on the second screen,
Mm-hmm.
if there was a way to like do like a little tile bar that indicated by like color or something how close they were to that service event to where they could visually see like these are the closest things that are needing service to where they could just select them and it just adds it to their shopping cart of services that need to be performed.
Right, there's no mysteries here. This is all going to be generated by usage. So they should be able to add one maybe, but it's mostly okay, yeah, it is time. I'm going to be going on a trip, and I can see that the next like 3 services I could wait, but I probably should get them done before I go.
Exactly.
Okay, so we can show like a legend. So what would you like to label these things? I mean, it's based on time and how dire it is to get it done.
So I think red would be like due or past due.
Or urgent, yeah. Definitely urgency.
I like urgent. I like the way that sounds. All right. What could this orange or yellow be?
Maybe just warning.
That sounds like something's wrong.
I know. I was just thinking that.
What about service soon?
There we go.
There you go.
All right, and then we got one more. Urgent service soon and
something that explains that it's
well within range.
I think within range is a little confusing.
Yeah, good for now.
Maybe current or something. Wish I had my phone to use a thesaurus. Urgent service soon, and
We could just say okay for now, I think.
I think that's all okay.
up to date, something all okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you guys will have it. Once we
Yeah.
get to the mid-fidelity prototype, again, I'll provide you guys a link at that point, and you can look through this, and you can actually comment right on the link for whatever text you want to change. So if we want to change some of the terminology a little bit, that would be the time to do so.
Okay.
All right. All right, so we have some sort of legend, and then let me just, this is going to be a list item. So we had said that the list item is going to contain what information?
So that would just show the equipment type themselves. So where you have the green right now, that could be like main engine.
There you go. I think that I like
Maybe-
your label color. That's great.
Or maybe if they were if they were able to click on the, I don't know if that make it too confusing, but if they could click on like the label key themselves and it only brings up the things that are urgent, it can like sort filter for them.
We can do that. Actually, we had another project recently where we did that. I think it worked out pretty well, actually.
Yeah, I like that a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you click it, we can filter those items.
Or maybe if on the, when you first open the screen, if it just prioritized them for urgent and then below was
Right.
service soon.
Yeah, so that's why I'm adding 3 here just so we can show that as an example of the ordering.
And then to the right of that, on each of those things, if you could have like add service cart or add whatever, so it just is populating that into their
Well, this is the list though. So whenever you click add service item, that's where I want to figure out what that flow is. What do they do to get an item here in this service list?
So the service list is automatically generating recommendations based off of the frequency that we've put in that's predetermined versus what they're updating on the timeline. So if they're putting in that they're at 6,000 miles, the system knows that the engine service needs to be performed at 8. So it would automatically put that in the yellow column for a service warning. And then from this screen, that information, this is what I would envision where they select which ones they're going to do and add to that cart that they can either print or email or whatever.
So we need a way for them to select which ones they're going to share.
Yeah.
So that's another way to think about it, Zach. I want to see them all. And this is the list of them all, which is great.
Okay,
But
so
I don't need to share them all. I just want to share.
You don't want them to go through this flow where they add a service item to this list, and then this is just a list of service items. You want to show everything. Okay. All right, let me delete this then. All right, so
the list should pre-generate. They're just determining, they're just deciding which one of those they either have money or time for currently.
Right.
And all of this is coming from the database. Let me actually put this in a comment. All right.
So we need a way to select them. So like a checkbox.
Yeah. So you can let's say swipe to remove. We can also show. Maybe we show that whatever is here that has not been added is like a recommendation almost. So they could go ahead and add that to the list then. What do you think about that?
One more time? Like
everything here that hasn't actually been added to this list yet is, to me, it seems more like a recommendation for them to add. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, based off the service reminders and scheduled timelines.
Correct.
so they can add those things perfect with the little button. And then maybe on the bottom where you previously had the button for add service event, you could go to service cart so they can see everything combined in the print off that the service provider is going to see.
Or service.
Okay.
So once they've selected the services that they want to request, at that point they can see it in a pre-generated like PDF and either print it or email it or share it. Does that make sense, Andy? Are you seeing what I'm trying to say?
A little bit. I think so. Zach, this is going to be a full list. That swipe to hide, I don't think makes sense here. Do you think that makes sense, Tim? The colored labels.
Swipe to hide. So, I mean, if you add something to this list, you might want to remove something from the list. Is that correct, or is that
probably not? The only thing that might.
What if I accidentally added something to this list?
So on that,
I don't know if you can.
If you hit add, could it just highlight the add button color so they can just scroll through, hit what they add, and if they hit it accidentally, they can just tap it again to turn it off?
More like a checkbox.
Well, we can do checkboxes as well, actually. Okay. I think that works. All right. So then at the bottom, you want like a
request service or something like that. What do you think, Tim? Or
generate
generate service.
If it said generate service request, and then it just brought them to like a detailed list of everything they've selected so they can see like engine service, everything that's involved, and then space down a couple and has generator service, and it shows everything that's involved. And then towards the bottom of whatever list they've generated, it has a share button where they can either share or print or whatever's easily recognizable by the client.
Right.
Okay, so
wow, somebody has a window open. Sounds really nice outside.
That's me, sorry.
That's awesome.
I'll go on mute.
No, that's cool. Not bothering me.
No, it's fine. Let me just add that button here. All right. So this list here is basically going to be everything we had over here.
Just less colorful and more information.
Yeah. Do you want to retain the color at all or no?
I don't think it makes sense here.
Okay. So for more information, I'm assuming this will be like a title, and then
Right.
Down here we can just have. So what? Just this is a description of like the.
It's gonna be like a sub bullet point list of like the 5 things that you have to do to that equipment, and then probably another small bullet list of any parts or lube or replacement pieces that need to go along with it.
I think that the equipment list, Andy, is going to have to be during like a different phase.
That probably makes sense.
Because
That's a lot of data in the
I'm
database.
not one to tackle Rome in a day, but I think there's a lot of collection we're already putting on our plate.
Yeah, I hear you.
So are we going to keep a description of what this service would be, or are we going?
That'll be in the PDF as a guideline, basically, right, Tim?
Yeah, we'll have that.
Yeah.
Maybe in the beginning stages, Andy, if we want to leave it up to the customer to add filter and part numbers and capacities, if that's an option, I'm not against it. I don't want to make it too complicated, but some people are pretty nerdy.
So is there anything else on this list aside from like this sort of layout for each list item?
No, if you just want to make a couple of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would work for now, and then the share.
All right.
That works great.
And I think we could actually just make this nice and big down here.
Ooh.
Oops, let me pin this here first. Okay, there we go. All right, that feels pretty solid for this section to me.
Yeah, it does.
All right, I want to try and make use of these larger buttons as well when possible, just so they're easy to use.
Yep.
Okay, so the next thing we have is basically the profile here. So this is just an image we have of that user. And then if we go down, we'll have the personal information, billing information, the list of their RVs. If they only have one, there'll only be one item in the list. But when we get to that mid-fidelity, we can make the list items for something like the RV list have a little bit more to it than just a tiny line item with a title. We can make it like a nice card or something like that.
Okay.
And then down here we have a few toggles. I'll get to those in a minute, and then they can go ahead and log out. So let's start off with the personal information. So if I click on personal information, I'm going to come over to this page here where I can view my name, email, phone number, address, and preferred method of contact, and I can change this information if I want to. Is this okay, or is there anything that you see that's off here?
It's good to me.
That's perfect.
All right, so I'll go back now. Let me have billing information. So if we click on billing information, we'll come over here and we'll get the payment information and the billing address. So
Great.
One thing I was thinking, maybe we could have another spot for the subscription. We're going to go back to sign up in a little bit and just go over that subscription flow. Again, I know, Andy, you and I went over that, but I just want to make sure Tim is on the same page as well.
Yeah, and Tim had some comments based on that too, so that'd be good to review.
Okay. All right, so for just the billing information, this covers everything here, I believe. Do you see anything missing?
Nope.
The only thing I could see is like maybe an option button to enroll in auto pay.
I think we're just going to force them into auto pay too. I would say that's the only way to do it, unless they.
Yeah, I mean, when you're going for a subscription-based service, I think it's expected. I mean, even in the subscription, like description, we're basically saying, you know, it's this much per month. Yeah, I think that's fairly standard.
Yeah.
Should there be an option then in there somewhere to choose your billing cycle date, or are we just going to make it a generic from when they sign up?
I mean, you could prorate it from when they sign up and then bill every day on the first of every month,
Okay.
or every first of every month, I should say.
Right. The first of every month.
Yeah, that's what I've seen a lot of people do.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we do for everything we've set up before. Is after the trial period, just prorate and set it up
I
for the
like
first.
Awesome. All right, so let me go back here, and then I'll click on the My RV list. And then here you'll have a list of whatever RVs that you currently have, and then you can add another RV.
Okay.
And that'll take you to that flow that we already had gone through. All right, so that's it for the profile. There's not too much here for the profile. But there are a few items here that I would like to look at for like toggles. So one of those things would be something like push notifications. I would want to be able to toggle those on and off. That's pretty standard. Do you guys have a problem with that?
That's a great idea. I definitely wouldn't want them during the winter or off season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any other types of notifications or things that you're going to be doing that someone may want to turn on or off, like email notifications or?
Probably. I imagine we'll be doing email notifications as well.
We need to discuss that as well, Andy. There should be an option to where there's like a standardized winterization, almost like when you put your car in storage for your car insurance, where it like cuts all your notifications back to just like the bare minimum standard of like just your monthly exercises and stuff. Like the system knows that the user is not in service, and we're going to dynamically change their service events during that time period to just the winterization options. We never even thought of that.
No, we didn't. That's a great idea.
Is that like a future phase thing? Or
definitely future phase, I think.
Okay.
All right. I don't think we're gathering enough information there.
Is there any other items here that you can foresee, or is this about it? Push notifications and email notifications.
I think that's it for right now. I'm sure it'll change down the road.
The only other thing I can think of is the update requests. So when we ask the user periodically to update their usage, like what's your current mileage and usage behavior, we might want to turn that off, or they might want to turn that off.
Okay. Let me actually jump down to the settings, because that's typically where we put this. I'm going to go down here.
That does make sense.
All right, so this is what I've got on right now. We've got email notifications, push notifications, text notifications. Is this something that would happen, or are we not going to do text notifications?
We are going to do text.
Okay.
I don't know if we should give them the option, Andy, just liability-wise, to shut off their updates. Because if we don't know their mileage, we can't give them recommendations, and that just seems like a loophole to get in trouble with. Well, you guys didn't remind me, and we didn't know where you were at.
Right, that's true. Right.
They may not.
That's not regarding me. That's something else, right?
I was regarding so this app will it'll need to prompt the user.
Yeah.
Like probably at least quarterly, I'm guessing, Tim, to get the current mileage and usage behavior. Like, are you using it frequently or infrequently or not at all? For the next quarter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are notifications that you can configure on the back end that will just fire off based on certain criteria, like time or something like that.
Exactly. And that'll leave them, basically bring them,
to
be able to click in that notification, then take them to the screen.
Yeah, and that would be like just a push notification. So that would just open the app if they clicked it.
Cool.
All right. So what else we got here? We have the change password flow. So if you click on that, you're going to come here, you're going to enter in your old password and then your new password, and you're going to confirm the new password. And then you can go ahead and save that. Let's go back. If you click on your subscription plan, you'll be brought over here to this page. So this is going to show you that subscription plan here. And then they can have auto renewal on or off. We were giving them that toggle. I was actually going to ask that question and see if that was even necessary to give them that auto renewal, or if we should just automatically bill them every month. What do you think?
Automatically bill.
I think we should just bill them every month.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can remove this auto renewal then.
What do you think, Andy?
I think it totally. We definitely need to turn that. Yeah, they don't need to turn it off.
Although actually, you were referencing auto renewal. You will get a discount of plus 1 month free.
So I don't think we need to do that.
Okay,
I think
cool.
we're going to be doing a referral program that'll give them the opportunity to get 3 months. I'm going to go find my PowerPoint.
That's in the future, though, right?
I think that's going to be. I think that's an important thing to get in there right away. Honestly.
All right, so we'll address that in a minute then.
Okay.
So one of the things I was going to ask you is, do you guys want to do like this sort of typical pay monthly or yearly deal? And if they pay yearly, maybe they get a small discount.
I don't see why that wouldn't. I don't see.
Sorry, I had to go get my power cord. What was the question?
No, I was going to ask you guys, do you want to do something that's like a pay monthly or yearly? And maybe if they pay yearly, they get some sort of small discount, like a couple bucks off the total price, so that their monthly would be more like $475 or $480 or something like that.
Instead of $5 a month, we could do 12 months for $55 or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. That way you're kind of giving them a small discount, but you're making sure that they're committed to that whole time.
I'd be okay with that. I don't think it's necessary, but I'd be okay with it. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I think you're on the right track there.
I'd almost rather have their monthly money, but if they want to set it and forget it, then I'll take their money however they want to share it with us.
We would definitely have to figure out a way, Andy, to identify the monthly versus the yearly subscriptions.
What do you mean?
Just for development and growth with the business, with our reinvestment of funds, we just have to be able to identify that, you know, if 40% of our base customers are paying for their full year in the months of January and February, and you'd be slim for reinvestment come October, you know?
That's kind of why I'm okay with just the flat $5 a month. There's a ton of value here.
Yeah, I don't even know if we want to do the yearly. It just makes the business matrix more complicated when we're projecting in the future.
Okay, we can cut that.
And it's just $5 a month. Cool.
All right. And so we'll add an option down here so that they can opt out of the subscription plan and discontinue.
I think that we've never addressed this either, Andy, but if you have multiple units, there may be tiered pricing for multiple units. It may not be just a flat $5. It may be like a $6.99 for 2 units, or.
I see. Like as.
Because we're supposed to integrate eventually to tow cars and to other equipment like ORV and stuff, you know. That should maybe just a later discussion. Scratch that.
Right. Let's assume 1 for now.
All right. And then down here they have the back on the settings. You have the terms and conditions, which will just go to a page that pulls in your terms and conditions from a web page, and the same thing for the privacy policy. And then they can go ahead and log out or remove their account. Cool. All right. So let's go back up to this sort of login flow. And Tim, are you okay if I kind of quickly blow through some of this?
Yeah.
All right. So this is the initial page here. When they open the app, you'll have the email address and password, which they can use to log in. Upon clicking login, that'll take them right down here to the home page.
I watched the whole first video, Zach.
Oh, you did?
I forgot to tell Zach that I recorded that for today.
You recorded me and didn't tell me.
Sorry.
That's okay. All right, so you understand this then, so I don't really have to go over this right now?
The only thing that I was concerned about, not concerned, but just had questions, we were debating whether we give a 2-month or a 2-week free trial version. And in my mind, it's kind of a daunting task to get this set up, and you're invested with money, which may be a deterrent to actually see the full value of our program. So in my mind, if we were to have a test drive version where we like capture an email so we can market to them later, but they're opened up to a pre-generated service screen, nothing specific to them, of course, and we may explain that in a disclaimer when they put their email in. But once they put their email in, it brings them to a dashboard of a account that's already all set up with all the options and all the chevrons working, so they can just it's little pre-user involvement. So before they're a client of ours, they can see a full working model. They're not distracted by how much information needs to be put in to get it to that point.
Like, could we give them a sample RV that they can, like, that's already in their account?
Well, not even their account. We're not even to that point yet. Just where they can just trial version and they can click, put their email in, and just see the full workings. And we'd have more of like it'd be more of like a demonstrational, not so much of a working model. But you could click on things and it maybe give a little brief tutorial or a pop-up of what it does and where the benefit and features, where we can really market and sell it, is what I would. It's like that'd be like the presentation section where we're really selling it to the person that's not the client yet.
We might have to do that as a video and not let them do it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is that something you'd rather put on like your marketing site for this? I feel like that would be a good place to intake that information, because I mean, everything else that you're saying is more stuff that they would have to download to the application when they actually download the app. I don't know. I think, to me, I think that information that you're talking about right now is more of a selling point for getting them to download the app, not necessarily show them once they've downloaded it. I think the reason they've downloaded the app is because you've done that job of explaining that to them. In the App Store, you have images that you can use to showcase the app and talk about that. So I think you could use images of like the UI, like RFP, and explain the benefit there as well. But I do think that marketing site would be the place that makes the most sense to go into that amount of detail on this stuff.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Zach, because I've seen like even animated GIFs and stuff in those.
Yeah.
So we could get a little creative. The 14-day trial was a concern. We might want to make that longer.
Well, we spoke about 3 weeks.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So basically, when you get into the application, what I want to do is once they sign up, we'll give them a screen that'll basically say, what did I say this?
3-week trial. Perfect.
Yeah, so once they sign up, what I want to do is I want to give them a screen that says basically you have a 3-week trial to explore the app. Everything is unlocked, so you can do anything inside the application. Something along those lines.
That's great.
And then at the end of that 3rd week period, we're going to hit them with this pop-up where they basically have to, purchase a subscription package, and then
Payment wall.
we'll request their payment information at that point if they haven't already entered it into their profile for some unknown reason.
That's great.
All right.
The other thing that we missed when we first talked about the login and registration process, we kind of skipped over the Google and Facebook.
Yes. Okay. So this is there is some information that we'll capture when they sign up with Facebook, and some information that they can capture when they sign up with Google.
Can they register with those or partially?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying by sign up.
Okay.
If you don't have an account, so there's not too much of a reason to have a button that says sign up with Facebook and then log in with Facebook. If they don't have an account and they click log in with Facebook, that will automatically take them to that account creation and validate them as a user. However, there is, like I just mentioned, there's some information that we are not going to be able to capture from their accounts. So if we were to look at what's on the sign up form, I mean, name, email, phone number, preferred method of contact, password, I think we could go ahead and basically bypass the name, email, password, and then the only other 2 items remaining would be the phone number and preferred method of contact.
That's awesome.
Now, so my question is, if I click sign up with Facebook or Google, do we need to have them enter this information in, or can at that point we just say, hey, look, the phone number doesn't really matter. We don't want to add anything to that sign up flow for that specific process. And then for the preferred method of contact, basically, since we're only capturing an email address, just set that to the email.
We'll just default to email.
Okay.
I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I don't think we need the phone number. I think it's nice to have if they come back here and feel like filling it in or going back into their profile and filling it in. But we don't need it upon the sign up.
Okay. So we'll capture the phone number if it's possible.
And I think email is the preferred method of contact. As default is probably a good.
Okay. All right. That should be good enough for that. I think that explains that section well. Okay. So Tim, you said you watched that video. Is there anything you feel that we missed in that call and or this one for this sign up flow?
And you're muted, Tim, just so you know.
No, this is all your guys' area expertise. I'm relying on Andy and you for all of this section.
All right. So before we wrap things up, we've got one more section that we had saved, and that is the dashboard. So let's go ahead and let's talk about this dashboard a little bit now that we've defined everything else within the application. What do we feel makes the most sense to show here?
So I feel like the warning message would just be a shortcut down to the recommended service screen where they can see how close they are, if something's red flagged,
if something urgent,
coordinated those.
Right. If something's urgent, that warning message should probably appear, or like view urgent.
And then they can click into that, see what's urgent, and they can either like ultimately like snooze it to where they're not worried about it, or postpone the reminder. I don't know what we would do there.
That's not a bad idea, actually, because I may not care about it at the moment, but in a week and a half, I'll have time.
Okay, well, not spelled right. Okay. All right, so if we have an item that becomes urgent within the service request section, we can have it pop up here. Now this can be a card where they have an option to snooze it, like you just said.
I'd say for up to like 2 weeks or a month, but not too long.
What are the options? Week
Maybe just like how you set a scheduled reminder on your phone, like if they choose the snooze option, they could be prompted on, well, when would you like to be reminded? And they can just select
Just
either like a calendar or
set the
a
date and time.
predetermined time frame. Yeah.
Okay.
If that's an easy UI to access.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a native, the date picker is a native selection basically. On iPhone, it's basically
Awesome.
the keyboard turns into this sort of scroll. And then I believe on Android, you actually have a calendar that pops up that you can swipe through and then select a day. So those are the native options for the devices.
Perfect.
All right. So
And then the rest of it's, oh, go ahead.
one other thing I was thinking is this could actually be a list here of warnings. So maybe for each item that shows up as urgent in the service request, each one gets its own warning message, which could be a card that gives a little information or just what the part is, so they can click it and go look at it. And then they can individually dismiss those items. Or
I like that a lot.
Did that warning button actually take you to a screen of a list? Because I know these customers, and I have a feeling a majority of them are going to have a pretty hefty list.
can they? Sorry, can they take you to a list of what?
A list. Instead of having them listed out specifically there on the button, it just takes you to a screen of everything that is urgent, because some customers may have 20 action items that are urgent and they just don't care.
I mean, it's basically this list.
Yeah,
right.
Maybe it just brings them to there. Just brings them to the service request screen.
So the only reason I was thinking about having this be a list is because on this dashboard, I mean, it is a dashboard. So we're basically going to have some charts and some information up here, which we'll define shortly. And then once you look at that, a lot of people do tend to scroll. So I'm thinking, I mean, if it is a list, at least they can scroll through something on the dashboard and have some movement in the application. I mean, that's kind of my thought behind that.
I like that a lot, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I do too.
We can play with that. And if we find out, hey, look, it's just we don't like it, it doesn't work, we can always rethink that card structure a little bit and then maybe roll items up into a single card, which then opens up that list or navigates them to the service request page where they can see that list.
Could we maybe, Zach, put a limit on it to where if the list gets to a certain amount, it just automatically forwards them to the screen?
Yeah, so let's see.
That's not a bad idea, actually. If there's more than
item, here is a card and a list. Let's say you want to limit the 10 to 10. So
10 makes sense.
The last card in the list, if it is 10, well, okay. There we go. Perfect. All right. So we have the item here. This is what the criteria for it showing up here. We're allowing them to snooze the alert, but do we need to allow some way to like permanently dismiss the alert, or how would that alert go away?
Good question.
And on top of that, that also brings me down here. So we have this list of things that are urgent and needs to be serviced soon. But say I generate that request and I go get it serviced. What has to happen for this stuff to be all okay now and not be urgent?
So somewhere from the shopping cart, we need to have a tile of services performed, and it may be empty at times because there's nothing there. But once the service shopping cart list was generated, everything needs to go over to that tile, which would be in the navigation screen. And when those services are drug over there, the user needs to be prompted to put in the date and miles of that service, or the date and hours, so we can record that it was performed on this date, so we can start to progressively generate the next service event based off of when they performed it.
Okay, so that's something they need to do for every individual item, correct?
When they have the service performed, yes.
Okay, so maybe what if we did we have the option to snooze. What if we added the option, I mean, even here as well, that way it's just on the front of the page where we're actually really bringing that information up to them. This way, again, they also don't have to navigate somewhere else into the app to do this. Maybe we could have a button here that says something like service, and then if they click that, we could give them a pop-up that asks for that information.
That's perfect.
Perfect.
I could also see it being if there's a way to go back to that service request that was generated, if they can somehow mark that service as completed.
But there's other information that you need to capture from that other than just the fact that it was completed. I think that's what Tim was saying.
Right.
So there's only two things really, Andy, that will have an hour meter, which is the engine and generator. Everything else is based off an annual usage. So maybe we can just generically, off that service event that was produced, that they created, maybe it would just pop up and just generically umbrella everything on that list to where we could ask like just a set qualifying questions like, what was your mileage for this? What was your hours for this? And then it could cascade for everything else that was performed, like maybe on an annual. It just would know that you put that date in, so it timestamps everything on there that's like annual with just that date, so they're not having to double up on information they're inputting.
Right. Okay.
So what questions are going to be asked here? Is that only going to come from the database, or is it a specific set of questions that every single service item is going to ask for?
That's what I think. That's what Tim was just talking about. So it's mostly just the date that was serviced, and then and in the case of the engine and generator, there'd be more information.
Okay.
Yeah, max, it'd be 3 questions. It'd be miles, hours, or date.
Miles, hours, date. Yeah. And date's the only one that's always going to be filled out.
And then from that, we can generically apply that to pretty much everything that was done during that service event.
I guess that was my point when we generated the service request. If we marked that request with a date, like service performed on everything on that list, that kind of blanket.
Okay.
And another thing we didn't really touch base on is once the user account is created and they input their information, so we know what equipment they have specifically. At that point, we have no way of setting up a timetable unless they input when the service was last performed.
Right. We will need that information when they.
Yeah, I think putting this stuff on the dashboard is really going to help capture that information, because I mean, this type of list is something that you're going to want to clear because it's showing you, hey, look, something's wrong. So to clear it, they have to enter in that information so you have it.
Right.
All right, so does that work for the warning message?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, and then, all right, so let's move up here and let's see what other types of data do you think is going to be valuable for these users to display here?
So the little circle chevrons, I think it'd be neat to be able for them to personalize, so they can click on that and then just have a list of all their equipments and whatever they want on their dashboard they can select, and it just is a live time feedback for whatever they think's most critical to keep up on or they can see at a glance.
Okay, so let's say I select, I'll use the famous selection here of air conditioning. What would show up there though?
It would just be based off of the time intervals of our recommendations from the internal server versus what they've updated us with as far as their usage, and then it would calculate the upcoming service event and show them on some type of data table how close or how near or far they are from their next event for that specific piece of equipment they selected.
Okay, so like
So that
time since last service, and then kind of show them like when they're getting into like red or close to when it needs to be serviced again, stuff like
exactly
that.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see.
Before I
sort of-
forget, Andy, because I've forgotten a couple times now, that upper chart, if we could have that as a reminder, as like an easy access area. I was thinking for updating their equipment. So if it had like engine hours, gen hours, or mileage and gen hours to where they could just click it and input that data. So it's constantly being updated when they're at their home screen.
So it's kind of always there, expecting them to update it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
The chart could just be anything that we require updated information, whether it's scrolling or not, where they could just easily input the information.
So that chart area we're talking about just being a list of form fields, Zach. Oh,
Up here.
basically, yeah. To capture mileage, generator hours.
It's just their usage table pretty much where we can update our system based off of what they're telling us their usage of their items are.
Do you think that's the
How often do you think you're going to have new items in that section? Is
That
it gonna
should
be-
really be only. Go ahead, Andy.
No, go.
I'm
So a lot of the equipment is based off of timeline, so it's annual. But for the equipment
give a
that's
specific
not,
like
if it's hours or mileage, I feel like that's where that should generate those items is only on the equipment that we need updates on.
So it's not going to be something that shows up all the time, though. It's going to be like on rare occasion.
Well, we don't really know the customer's usage. Like a full-time person may stay at an RV spot for 2 months, and then the next 3 months they're constantly driving, circling the country. So if we're not getting updated on like their engine mileage, then our warning messages below hold no weight because we're not there. We're not able to see how many miles they're driving. So it
We
just
don't
has
know
to be
that.
something that they're able to recognize easily and see, oh yeah, what's the mileage, and just punch it in.
Okay, so let's see. I think first off, stick these two on top because they have less user interaction. And then here, so here you're envisioning like having different metrics, like you just said, miles.
So I don't not metrics, right? We want to display the
We just
I would
want to
say
display
the current mileage
report.
and the last time it was updated, so they can see like, oh, it's been 6 weeks since I've updated the mileage. I should put that in now.
Yeah.
And then
Is there any other on that?
probably the same thing for the generator hours.
We'll determine the list just as long as we know that anything that's specific to hours or miles would be populated in that section for the user to update frequently.
And let's make it clear how long it's been since they have updated.
Okay.
Because some users that won't matter, but like Tim said, some users are going to be driving thousands of miles, in a couple months. So
Yeah.
updating it more frequently for them is more useful.
Okay, so what I am going to need from you guys, I think everything else is good. I understand this dashboard and what you guys have a vision for on this dashboard. But what I will need from you is basically what you're telling me is for every single equipment list item, it will have its own chart and they could differ from each other. So I would need to know like what that chart is going to consist of, basically.
Every chart is going to be determined by only 3 things. It's either age, so time, miles, or hours.
So how old is the refrigerator?
Or how many hours have you used the item, or how many miles has the item been driven.
And that's just going to be like those are going to be gauges based on those. So we can get a list to you, Zach, on what items will have what kind of gauge.
Yeah, I mean, if you could do that, that'd be great. And then, I mean, you're basically saying you said it was hours, miles, and what was the other one?
And time. Age.
Okay, so if there's a specific way that you want to display that time, I mean, I understand like gauges and things like that, but I mean, terminology or however you want to phrase these little charts, let me know so we can add that in.
Okay.
And then down here, you said there's going to be a few different types of inputs that you're going to want. So let me know what those are as well, so we can actually add them in here.
Okay.
All right.
We'll get more specifics together.
This is where, Andy, the development of the DBAAS is critical for the functionality of the application itself.
For sure. Definitely. It's going to be driving our entire dashboard.
It is. And do remember, Zach, that what we're creating right now is based off of Andy had me pretty much filter down the whole company to a minimum viable product for the first phase, because this dashboard is going to drastically change during the next 2 or 3 phases. There's a lot more implementation, but it's just going to require a bigger staff to keep it up to date.
Understood.
So these things are it's kind of overlapping right now, but we're just trying to keep it to the basics that'll get it to launch and give value to the client.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's everything we needed to discuss right now. Do you guys have any other questions or comments before we go ahead and jump off?
We have a meeting on Sunday. We'll put our heads together and come up with more specifics on that dashboard.
All right. Beautiful. And then I think Monday we can go ahead and get started on the actual mid-fidelity prototype. If you guys are okay with what you see here, given all of the little adjustments and notes that I've made within comments here.
I just wanted to give credit where it's due. I talked to Karthik yesterday, and again, I just wanted to congratulate your team on the transparency you've had with us and the way you're able to take our concept and get it down on paper. It's way over exceeded my expectations.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that a lot.
Definitely appreciate working with professionals that
that's always the best, isn't it?
Can hear what we're trying to say.
Absolutely.
Hey, I tried using that mock-ups and watching you. Yeah, there's no way.
No, this is a pretty cool tool. You should look it up. It's called Miro, M-I-R-O. It used to be called Real-Time Board. There's a little tiny learning curve to it, I think, but once you get going, it's pretty neat. I mean, you got like sticky notes, shapes. You can draw whatever you want really quick. It's really neat for collaboration.
Cool. Definitely.
But all right, guys, if that's it, I'll let you guys go and get to the rest of your day.
Okay, I think early next week, to answer your question, works for mid-fidelity for us, I think, unless we need to do more approvals with Karthik first. But that being said, I think we'll have a conversation with Karthik and make sure we're on board to make sure you're ready to go next week.
Perfect. All right, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to have my team finish making these adjustments that I had. I'll give it one last review and make sure that everything looks in line with what we've been discussing. And then if I feel okay with that, I'll go ahead and have them start working on the mid-fidelity.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Zach.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.